up, YouTube? How you feeling? How you living? What's good? It's your girl Francie, and today is Friday, which means it's Fact Friday. We get to the straight facts about what's really going on. And today we are talking about a subject matter that is related to some of the videos I talked about, some of the things that I talked about this week, which is the 13th Amendment. I talked about it definitely yesterday in regards to how innocent people end up in jail. I talked about it on Wednesday when I talked about reverse racism and how slavery is still kind of a thing to this day. And this is part of the issue of what I'm talking about, which is how the 13th Amendment has a caveat in it that still allows for people to go unpaid for their labor and essentially still be slaves. in my opinion, it's called involuntary servitude, but it's still technically kind of sort of slavery. Like, let's be real. And I'm gonna try to keep it shorter than I did the last couple videos because those were like 20 minutes long. I had a lot to say, but today we're gonna keep it short, simple, and to the straight facts. So let's get into it. Okay, so the 13th Amendment was put into law in 1865, which officially abolished slavery in the United States. But there was a loophole for involuntary servitude, like I said, and it reads, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. Essentially, if a person goes through a trial, they're convicted of a crime, they can do what is called involuntary servitude, which essentially allows for them to have their services used without pay, right? And so this is a loophole that essentially allows people in jails and prisons to have their work and their services to be used either without pay or with minimal pay, i.e. like a cent per hour, right? And so mainly people see this clause as a catalyst for the rise in the prison system, incarcerating black people at 4 times higher rate than their white counterparts, right? So when looking into this, I looked into the history of what happened, following the abolishment of slavery and how this essentially, this loophole was a catalyst to the rise of black people ended up in jail. And one thing I found out about was black codes. Following slavery, once black people were freed from slavery, there were some codes that were put in place that essentially made it a lot easier for them to end up in jail. Some of these codes being having to show respect to people. If you don't show respect, then you'll be arrested. It limits what they can do, what kind of property they can have. It limits, it had vagrancy laws, very strict vagrancy laws, so homelessness was essentially criminalized, which it still is to this day. It made a limit on how much they can make at certain kinds of employment. It made laws to say what kind of employment they can do, and if they disobey these laws, they could be thrown in jail. And being thrown in jail allows them to be used as involuntary servants. And another thing that I learned about in doing my research is what was called convict leasing. So essentially, people they would put people in jail, and they would contract these people out to white planters and white farm owners and use them essentially as labor. So taking them from being property, i.e. 3/5 of a person, into being an involuntary servant for the same people that they were freed from slavery from, right? And so they went back to the plantations that they were freed from as now prisoners for crimes that just so happen to just pop up as black codes and put them in jail at a higher rate than their white counterparts. So now they're going back to toiling the fields that they just came from. If you look at how the criminal justice system has grown over time, one thing that I talked about in my Black on Black crime video is that a lot of crimes, as well as the video I did yesterday, a lot of ways that laws are written disproportionately affect people of color, i.e., like I said yesterday, the cash bail system and how that puts people in jail, i.e., things like the maximum minimums when it comes to certain kinds of drug charges, the war on drugs that occurred, and I want to do a video on that, but I don't know how to not make it controversial. But the idea that, the more policing that they do in inner cities, the fact that I said that, black people are more likely to get stopped by cops, like this all puts into place a idea that black people are more likely to end up in jail. And because that is to happen, they are more likely to be affected by this involuntary servitude. Now, if you look at the United States in general, the United States has 2.2 million people in jail, which is the largest in the world. We have more people in jail than any other place in the world. And using prison labor has saved us as a country a lot of money. Well, if you look at places like California, they use prisoners as volunteer firefighters. Instead of paying firefighters, which comes out of taxpayer money, they use prisoners as voluntary firefighters. Or you see cleanups being done on the highways. They use prisoners to do things like that. Or they use, the guise of having skill training and in prisons, and using that skill training to use them for free labor, when those skills aren't actually helping them outside of jail. It's essentially getting them help in jail, giving them something to do while they're in jail, but it isn't really helping them get out of jail and get a job. Or you look at things like the fact that there's a lot of companies that use prison labor to make their products. It was found that in the 1990s, Victoria's Secret used prison labor in order to make lingerie. It was found that in the 1970s, 1980s, IKEA was using prison labor, as well as Unicorn, I think that's how you pronounce it, which is used for uniforms and things like McDonald's, different fast food restaurants. They get their uniforms from prison labor. So prison labor is contracted out to different, companies and different organizations to use in order to get free or cheap labor. So let's look at, how this affects people while they're in jail, and how this affects the ability for us to essentially still keep slaves in this country. So if you look at a place like Angola, it's a prison out in Louisiana. It's the most populated prison, I think, in this country. At least the last time I went to visit there, and it is, if you've ever seen pictures, I'm gonna put pictures up. If you look at the way that it works, they have people out there in fields picking, picking fruit and vegetables out, and they sell it. They sell those fruit and vegetables that they use prisoners to pick. They have guards on horses with guns, and if you ever see it in person, as I did, it looks like pretty much slavery. I was just like, wow, this feels a lot like what you would probably think slavery looked like when it was in place. And and then there's different ideas and things like, well, prisoners, they're supposed to go in jail, and they deserve to be there. And we talked about yesterday how sometimes that's not true, but they deserve to be there. They should be used as they should be given back to society. This is their way to give back to society, right? And I can see that, but to me, especially when you get to the fact that it is disproportionately affecting people of color, when you get to the fact that a lot of times people end up there who are not guilty of crimes, or guilty of smaller crimes that maybe you may not think are that big of a deal, and they end up there, or they get there for the 3-strike rule. That's a whole nother video that I'm gonna make for the fact that you do 3 minor things, you can end up in prison for the rest of your life, and things like that. And you may think, oh, they're giving back to society, but again, you're realizing that these people are not being compensated for the work they're doing, the work that they are forced to do. Because if you look at most prisons, once they clear you for medical, they make you have to work. There is no, I'm tired today. There is no, I can't do it. They force you to work, and they put guards on horses with guns to make sure that you're doing your job. That to me rings more of a servitude, i.e. slavery, than it does giving back to society, making amends for things you've done. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, prison's supposed to be rehabilitative, right? Prison's supposed to be a place that you go to, you do your time, and you come out, and you're supposed to be a better person. And the fact that you say when a person goes in there, they have to somehow give back to society by having their labor taken from them for free or for cheap. Most people in jail get a couple cents an hour. Kind of doesn't add up to me, as well as the fact that if a person decides that they can't work or they're sick that day, they can be put in put in solitary confinement for not working. And it is essentially a system that puts people who may or may not be guilty or not guilty of a crime, and even if they are, crimes that may not be to the length of time that they're in there. And you look at the fact that now they're being forced to work in sometimes horrible conditions. I mean, you think about Louisiana. If you haven't been to Louisiana, it's hot, okay? It is very hot. They have to be out there in the fields essentially working while being monitored by a guard with a gun. Or you look at the fact that they're being used to help companies save profit for the fact that they don't have to pay. It's pretty much slave labor. So they don't have to pay people the amount of money that should be paid to a person to make the product that they're making. And then you look at the fact that, they're using them as firefighters against their will because they don't want to pay firefighters, and they're putting them in harm's way, essentially, to save money. Or you see that they have them on the side of the road. They could be hit by a car to pick up roadkill and litter, and you see that they don't get paid for it. They don't get compensated for it, regardless of what your idea about people in jail is. To me, it still rings of slavery. It still rings of something that we apparently abolished a long time ago. And so you can, like I said, you can think whatever you want about them in a moral standpoint, but they're still a person, and they're still a person that's putting in very dangerous, intense labor to save you money, the taxpayer. Like, we would be paying for the firefighters, we'd be paying for road work, we'd be paying for this if it wasn't for the fact that these people aren't getting paid for it. So, like I said, I'm gonna keep this one short. I'm not gonna ramble on, but that is how the 13th Amendment essentially allows for there to be a loophole of slavery in this country. I would recommend, if you haven't watched the movie 13th, it is on Netflix. It's a very good movie. I was going to do a review of that movie. I wanted to do a movie review in general, but A, editing it is a lot harder than I thought it would be, and B, with copyright and everything, even though it's commentary, I didn't want to have to deal with that in the beginning of my YouTube career. So maybe one day I'll do it when I more so know what I'm doing. But yeah, it's a really good movie, so check it out. I'll link it in the description. If you have Netflix, it's a great movie. But they talk about it way better than I do. I just wanted to talk about this because I think it's very important in conjunction with the three things that I talked about: black on black crime, and how black people are persecuted more, reverse racism, and how the fact that racism is a deep-seated systematic system that has been going on since slavery, and then slavery is still a thing to this day in regards to the 13th Amendment, and the fact that innocent people end up in jail for multiple reasons that we don't really think about, and somehow we still try to reason the fact that these people are being used as free labor, and it's really upsetting. So if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you put them in the comment section about what I've talked about today. If you like this video, hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed already, I'm here. Hit that subscribe button. I'll be here. Even though after this month I will never do an every day a month video challenge, because God, it's a lot. But I will be here definitely the 4 days a week that I usually am. And that being said, I'll see y'all tomorrow for Saturday. Saturday's gonna be probably short too, but I'll be here. So see you then. Bye.